Modern Guitar School is online. A warm welcome to all of you once again. Today, we're moving on to part 2 of the workshop on optimizing electric guitars, specifically focusing on a Les Paul. My name is Christian Moser, and I've been a professional musician for 30 years, both live and in the studio. I run my guitar school in Wiesbaden very successfully. I've rebuilt and modified guitars for myself, for other guitarists, and for a lot of students, so I know what I'm talking about. Today we'll continue with tip number 12. In the first workshop I covered tips 1 through 11, and today we're starting with the bone nut on the Les Paul and why you would do something like that. Let me show you what I mean. I hope you can see it clearly. Here is the bone nut. At first glance, it looks just like a regular nut, but it has much better properties than the standard plastic nut that Gibson uses, or that most other guitar companies use as well. That's because bone is a very, very hard material. It transfers the vibration of the string much better into the neck, which results in better sound characteristics. So the tone sustains longer and sounds more brilliant. Bone also has the advantage that it contains a certain amount of fat, which prevents the string from getting stuck in the slots. That's a typical problem with Gibson guitars. Most people probably know this from the G string. The G string always tends to get stuck with a regular plastic nut. And that's really annoying because when you're playing, your guitar quickly goes out of tune since the string eventually pops out of the slot and then sounds lower. So once again, the advantages of bone. You get a better tone because the vibration is transferred to the neck more effectively. This results in a clearer and more resonant sound. A bone nut also produces more harmonious overtones. This means your instrument sounds a bit livelier and richer in overtones, which further enhances the overall impression in a positive way. You also get balanced frequencies. Bone transmits bass, mids and highs more evenly into the instrument, resulting in a more balanced, well-rounded sound. And then there's the durability. Bone is a very, very durable material. It doesn't wear down or become brittle and cracked like plastic might, so the slots also keep their shape longer. A very important point, which I've already touched on, is improved tuning stability. If you have a bone nut, your guitar stays in tune better, especially here with the locking tuners I have and the bone nut. I always exaggerate a bit and say a tank could drive over this guitar and it would still be in tune. Of course, that's total nonsense, but you know what I mean. There's no more of that issue where the G string gets stuck or anything like that. Everything works perfectly. The string just slides right through, and you have extremely good tuning stability. Again, this is a traditional point which I already mentioned earlier. A bone nut is more authentic because on the really old Gibson models from the 1950s, bone was also used as the nut material. Alright, let's move on to point 13. Point 13 is the putties, or to say it fully, potentiometers. I always use 500 kilo ohm pots, just like you would for humbuckers, and whenever I can, I install original Gibson pots. They're usually, I believe, made by CTS, or I order CTS pots directly from Rockinger. In any case, this is an aspect where you shouldn't try to save money because pots often have pretty significant tolerances, and sometimes you might actually get 650 kilo ohms even though it says 500 kilo ohms on it. But I think the values are more stable if you spend a bit more money. So what does a bit more money mean? An original pot costs around 10 euros or so, and it's worth it because then you won't get any crackling for years and you won't have any problems with these pots. Another point you should pay attention to when retrofitting your pots: there are logarithmic pots and there are linear pots. That means, how does the potentiometer behave when you turn the tone knob? And since our ears naturally perceive volume in a logarithmic manner, it actually makes sense to use logarithmic potentiometers, or pots. I once tried installing a linear pot in my guitar as a test, and it actually had a somewhat strange sound or volume behavior for me. As I mentioned, Gibson and I believe other companies also use logarithmic values as standard from the factory. Okay, before I forget, this is very important, really, really important. If you're buying a pot for a Les Paul, you need a longer shaft length because the pot obviously has to go through the top, and the top on a Les Paul is a bit thicker than on most other guitars. So it's not enough if you have a shaft length of just 1.5 centimeters. The shaft length of a Les Paul pot, I think, is roughly estimated to be 2.5 to 3 centimeters, but that's indicated. There are different shaft lengths. You take the long pots and then you'll be able to get through the top. Okay, tip 14, the truss rod cover. What is a truss rod? The truss rod is the steel rod that's embedded here under the fretboard, which absorbs the string tension of 40 to 50 kilos at the headstock so that the neck doesn't bend. Because that little bit of wood couldn't withstand that kind of string tension, and the truss rod cover is up here. So I think now you've seen it. Of course, it's just a bit of fun. You could just as well put the plastic ones on or keep the plastic part that was already on there. This guitar is just modified like that. Pretty much everything has been changed. And I thought, hey, why not put a little stylish skull up there too? It always looks good. Tip 15, keep your cable short in the electronics compartment. As you can see with mine, I haven't run any long cables in there. I used to always leave the cables long, thinking maybe if you rebuild it again, you might need a different cable length, so I just coiled them up. At some point I read, I think it was on the Klopman website. Klopman makes very, very good pickups and really knows a lot about them. He also recommended keeping the cables short because of capacitance. After all, a cable always has a certain capacitance depending on its length, and that affects the sound. After that, I changed the lengths of my cables and kept them shorter, and lo and behold, you could actually hear the difference. At first, I didn't think it was possible, but keep your cables as short as possible. That way, you'll simply have less capacitive influence. Point 16. The pickups. A really hot topic. The pickups, neck pickup, bridge pickup, are a crucial part of your guitar's overall sound. This guitar has already had Seymour Duncans, EMGs, all kinds of brands in it. There was even a metal phase for me when I was touring worldwide with Red Circuit, my metal band. Back then, I installed some hotter pickups. Hotter means if you send a bit more output from the pickup into your amp, it basically increases the distortion, just to put it simply. That depends on a variety of factors such as the magnet, the number of windings, which winding wire was used, and so on. Here's a very basic explanation of how a pickup works. Maybe some of you still remember your physics classes at school in 8th grade or 9th grade. Class, here you have a permanent magnet or several permanent magnets. And between the string and the permanent magnet, there is a magnetic field. When you move a metallic object within a magnetic field, a voltage is induced because a coil is wound around the magnets. This small voltage is sent through the cable to the amplifier, and depending on how much it is, it can even overdrive the input stage. That means pickups with higher output are usually used in heavier styles where a lot of distortion is needed. If you're more into classic rock, like I am right now with my band Jukebox Hero, for example, we cover Foreigner. There I don't need as much gain, so I've gone back to the original setup, a Gibson 498 at the bridge and a 490 at the neck. These are two beautifully balanced pickups that are also installed in many production guitars, and I really love this combination because, for example, in the middle position it gives you a great clean sound, and the neck pickup sounds warm and round, really sings. So I can only recommend you try out this combination, it's worth it. Now we're already at point number 17, which is about 50s versus modern wiring. This refers to where the capacitor is located in the electronics compartment at the back. Here you can see the orange capacitors again. They have a certain influence on the overall sound behavior, or rather on what happens when you turn down your tone knob. With modern wiring, it's basically as you'd expect. When you turn down the tone knob, the treble decreases and you get a somewhat duller sound. And the volume knob simply works as a volume knob. With 50s wiring, things are a bit different. There, the two potentiometers influence each other. For example, if you turn down the volume knob on your guitar with 50s wiring, you retain more of the treble frequencies. And when you turn down the tone knob, it actually affects the mids first, and only at the very end of the range does the guitar sound a bit duller. This creates a nice acoustic sound. So with 50s wiring, you can basically get different sounds out of the guitar, since both knobs influence each other. You can just try rewiring it yourself. I'll show a wiring diagram. Basically, you just need to change the position of the capacitor, and just like that you have one wiring or the other. Alright, point number 18. It's really just a small, cheap piece of plastic, but it's not insignificant when it comes to playing comfort. Namely, the type and style of the potentiometer knobs. There are all sorts of shapes and different grips, and if you're like me and do a lot with the pots during a live gig, like rolling back the gain, you'll come to appreciate that the pots have different grips. You just have to try them out for yourself. Of course, the whole thing should also match the guitar. I've swapped them out as well. Who would have thought for a different color? And now I really like it, both in terms of grip and looks. So number 19, the pickguard. The pickguard, this plastic shield here, protects the body from the hundreds of thousands of pick scratches you make on it, so that maybe one day the guitar would be worn through there. It's a traditional element on Gibsons, usually in a kind of cream color. My wife always calls it nicotine colored, and she hates these cream colored ones. It's all a matter of taste. I'm not trying to talk anyone into anything here. With this guitar, I just liked the black look. With some guitars, I even take it off completely. For example, if a guitar has a really beautiful wood grain, I'll just show you that real quick. Here, for example, you already know this one from other videos. This is a top you can really show off. And of course, I don't put a cover on that. It's also really easy to install, so you don't need to worry. With 2 screws, the cover is screwed into the wood here. You can take it off really easily. You don't have to go to a guitar builder or anything like that. So one more little visual detail. The switch washer, as Rockinger calls it at least, is this little ring on the 3-way switch. There are also lots of different shapes and types of these. This one is made of metal. Most of them are plastic, often in this cream color too. That wouldn't fit here at all, but it really doesn't matter. It's really just a visual thing. But we all want to have a beautiful guitar after all. And now we've already reached the last point, point 21. Earlier I already told you something about tuning stability, which is greatly improved by the bone nut and locking tuners. Now there's a third aspect you can also apply to your guitar. That is additionally lubricating the nut slots. There are various materials for this. Lately I've been using silicone oil from Rockinger. There's also another option which is supposedly popular at rodeos. The product is called Big Bend Nut Sauce, a rather funny name. It's a small tube that lets you apply a special lubricant precisely into the nut slots. When changing strings, you then put the string back on, and the whole thing lubricates tremendously, so you have no more friction points at all, and it also improves tuning stability. All right, my dears, that's it. We've gone through 21 steps that I performed on this guitar, and every single one of them was worth it. Maybe you like one or another of these tips and want to try them out, or you're having problems with your instrument's tuning and it keeps going out of tune, or the G string keeps popping, then try out one or more of these steps and I promise you you'll have a better instrument afterwards. The whole thing is just more fun. The instrument is more reliable. All in all, it's worth it. I hope you were able to get something out of this workshop. If you had fun, give me a like. I'd really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. That makes it even more fun for me to put out videos like this for you. I'll say goodbye now and see you next week.